Scanning for audio.
Welcome once again to a Tin Dog podcast. Ah, yes. It's the time of the year where all the podcasters get to record their one last live review, because there won't be any Doctor Who on TV for some time. The clever money, or rather the majority of people, which isn't always the clever money, is on that Doctor Who will return sometime in the autumn, possibly the beginning of the winter, take us right through to Christmas, possibly have breaks, possibly not, and then into the new year. 2013, which then there'll be a big gap right up to and including November the 23rd, 2013, which will be the 50th anniversary of the show. All this sounds marvellous. Great plans are afoot. We don't know what they are because they are indeed a secret, and that's the nature of secrets that we're not meant to know. The series is in good hands, apparently, and that's fine. I'm not in charge. All I do is comment and witter and chat, and that's what many of my colleagues in the podcasting world are doing this week. We're all chatting inanely about an episode of Doctor Who that was on Christmas Day. Oh, by the way, did you enjoy my Tin Dog podcast Christmas Day special? I know it wasn't particularly long, but I'm hoping you liked it. I haven't actually received any feedback at all about it, so perhaps you didn't like it. I mean, there's no reason for any of you to be downloading podcasts on Christmas Day. Some of us have families after all, don't we? It doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm recording this and the next few shows back to back, and then I'll be releasing them as always whenever I feel like it. The next couple of shows are all reviewing the new unit boxed set. As always, I'm doing one story at a time, so it's Invasion of the Dinosaurs or Dinosaur Invasion, depending on how your bread's buttered. After that, you've got Android Invasion. So that's a Pertwee and a Baker, both with unit kind of in there. Kind of. But we'll leave that until those specific reviews. Today, I'm here to talk about the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. Now, there was a prequel, a preview, if you like, available online. Now, I thought it was actually going to be shown beforehand. The Doctor was on board a ship orbiting the Earth, which was about to invade, destroy it, and something horrible was going to happen if he took his finger off the switch. He'd phoned the TARDIS to speak to Amy, but of course, in his own personal time stream, Amy's been gone for some time. He leaves a message, hangs up, and then the ship starts to explode. Cut to the beginning of the actual episode. Not everyone on Earth had seen the prequel. No doubt it'll turn up on the DVD. But then we get into what looks like, a Vogon constructor ship in orbit around Earth. Because if you hadn't seen the prequel, you could be forgiven for believing that's the sort of thing it was. The Doctor trying to save the Earth from the Vogons is by far the best piece of fan fiction I'm willing to see, but that's not what we're here to discuss. So the Doctor, and I don't really want to tell you what happens in the episode, let's face it, by now you've seen it, and that's why I've let time pass. I also had to let time pass to ruminate on what was happening.
Why are you doing all this?
I'm just trying to take care of things. I'm the caretaker.
That's not what caretakers do.
Then why are they called caretakers?
Their father's dead. Lily and Cyril's father. My husband is dead, and they don't know yet, because if I tell them now, then Christmas will always be what took their father away from them, and no one should have to live like that. Of course, when the Christmas period is over, I don't know why I keep shouting at them.
Because every time you see them happy, you remember how sad they're going to be. And it breaks your heart. Because what's the point in them being happy now if they're going to be sad later? The answer is, of course, because they are going to be sad later.
Which brings us to this year's Christmas special. And I say this year's, but God knows when I'm going to release this podcast. So the 2011 Christmas special, The Doctor, The Widow, and The Wardrobe. Immediately you go, oh, it's based on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, because last year's was based on The Christmas Carol. But in the narrative of Christmas Carol, the Doctor does say, "Ooh, that's given me an idea. I'll use that as an influence because I can do that." This is not the same thing. And because the Christmas Carol was so good, to me it's one of the best Doctor Who stories ever, it's going to make this episode difficult to reach the same heights. Now, I know Christmas specials have been a little bit hit and miss as far as hardcore fans have been concerned, but the Christmas special is an odd beast. It is, of course, aimed at Doctor Who fans because, we'll watch it, but the hardcore fans will watch anything. So what it's actually aimed for is the family audience and the casual viewer, the person who doesn't always see Doctor Who. So narratively speaking, it has to pay homage, at least, to the ongoing narratives of Moffat's work. But it also has to, be a one-off story. It's got an hour to fill, ish, and that's about it. Now, because of the whole Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe implication, shall we say, at the beginning, it sets off a few alarm bells instantaneously, because anyone who knows anything about The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe knows that it's basically an allegory for Christianity. Yes, there's those lovely alarm bells going off. I can see them from here. Not that we had anything to worry about whatsoever. RTD used religious iconography more than any other Doctor Who producer, and he's an atheist, but he also understands the importance of a good story and a good morally upstanding tale. Moffat's religion, no idea. Don't care, not really important, because it's not really The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. My favourite all-time character from Narnia is the witch. To be fair, I would have gone with her in her sleigh before she even got out, the Turkish delight. And if anything, that would have spoilt it and put me off. Pale women wrapped in furs is hardly politically correct, so let's leave it there, because they just aren't in this story. And the feminist aspects of this tale versus Arnia, I'm definitely coming back to that in a few moments. So yeah, the nature of the Christmas beast is an odd creature indeed, but we've learned to accept it. It's got to be fun, it's got to be funny, it's got to be frivolous, it's got to not really be part of a major ongoing narrative, otherwise you just confuse people. Last of the Time Lords, I'm looking at you. And that, all in all, is fine. So beforehand, like I said earlier, we had that lovely little, narrative moment. We jumped straight into a flashback, and this is where my back first went up. The Doctor surviving the fall to Earth, admittedly in something called an impact suit, a lifeboat in a spacesuit form I can just about live with, being chucked out of an airlock in deep space. We're back to the Hitchhiker's Guide again. I know the reality, or at least the apparent reality, of being chucked out into space. I could live with the force-shielded temporal dome thingy covering the hole. But as he was plummeting towards Earth, putting on his coat in a hurry so he was facing the wrong way, seemed just a little bit not good, not great, not impressive. I just didn't like it. I preferred the physics of a cold sun over this thing. But hey, my back was up. I was ready to kick off. But no, I put my brain back in neutral. It was a Christmas special. Let it go. That's fine. And so we have the lovely little setup. The reason the Doctor owes this woman a favour. The woman who can't drive. The mother with the husband. It's probably summer of 1939 or even 1938. If enough people talk about it, it becomes true. That could be a line for all Doctor Who fans. If enough people want it to come back, it'll be true. Or am I just reading far, far too much into a line like that? Yes, Mr. Smith himself is sitting in an armchair, reading about the war. The guy does have a certain period quality to him, and that's fine. And yes, it's the woman out of Outnumbered, and I can live with that. And the two kids, and one's got a telescope for no reason, and the kids don't pass on the messages. I can live with all of this. It's lovely little character moments and setup. Not quite the flair of RTD, but that's fine, because we're not in RTD's more than capable hands. No, we're hanging around with the Grand Moff. And the Christian allegory made by Tolkien's best mate, we can just ignore. We know there are basic things to do with The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. There's a wardrobe. There's a lion, there's a witch. Well, we've got rid of the lion, we've got rid of the wardrobe. Well, we've got a TARDIS. And the Doctor, well, rather lovely in this one, he set himself up as a new character called the Caretaker. Yes, the Doctor is mentioned the once, but it's very, very fast, and he insists everyone calls him Caretaker, which is a lovely little nod to the ongoing narrative of let's pretend the Doctor himself is dead. More than fair. Quite agreeable. Yes, you've got the lovely big house, echoes of Lion the Witch, that's fine. You've got the lovely blue box, and everyone in the world's going, ooh, TARDIS. But then again, it's not the TARDIS, it's probably an extension or a little amazing force-shielded doorway, gateway, hole-in-the-wall thing. You know, if I had a TARDIS, it would just be a wooden door. It doesn't have to have extra dimension to it. Why does that sound so familiar? I'm sure it's been done somewhere. But a door with a lock, that's all you need. Park it against a wall, that'll be fine. I'm rambling, I really am. So yes, shall we discuss the feminist versions of this story? I don't know, not quite yet. There's things that need to be discussed, aren't there? It's not the most complicated of narratives, it's fairly straightforward. Again, that's because it's a Christmas story. Perhaps Moffat's been paying attention to people saying he's too complicated, but that's because it's a 13-week structure. Here he's got an hour. And I don't mind. Perfectly acceptable story. I liked it. And that's what it comes down to. In its sense, in itself, that's what all of these reviews are about. Was your initial reaction one of liking it? And yes, it was. Perfectly acceptable. There was a few moments like, I don't know, the baubles on the trees. Was I the only person in the whole world who went, oh, great intelligence, silver spheres moving on their own, it's the Yeti, hooray! And no, it wasn't. I got so carried away, but that's probably why they were there in the first place. The tree people looked marvellous. I spoke to my mother soon after Christmas, and she said to me that she really wants one for the garden. But more importantly, my mother sat through Doctor Who of her own accord and enjoyed it. And that's something that hasn't happened for a long, long time. So maybe that is the vote of appreciation that Moffat needs. Back to the narrative, I think. Yes, the whole Lancaster Bomber, the whole father dying, and that lovely speech about delayed pain and people knowing how sad somebody else is going to be and protecting them. Ringing so true for so many people at this time of year. That would be the real world, not the Doctor Who world. It's probably the reason that we watch these things. One of them anyway. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Tiny moments like when everyone stumbles out of the Lancaster Bomber and you go, where's the rest of the crew then? What happened to them? And that's not really gone into. But for me, and yes, I will now discuss it, there's a whole theory out there, a wave of opinion. Is Doctor Who a feminist show? Janet Fielding will swear and say, no, it's not. There are other readings of texts that will say that yes, but that's like asking, was Servalan a strong female or not in Blake 7? It doesn't really matter on many, many levels. Here it does. Here it really does. And it doesn't even scratch the surface on redressing the balance of shows that's gone before. But in its 48/49th year by, 7 days, I think we can embrace this as an example of a decent feminist reading in Doctor Who. The race of aliens can only be saved by a woman. Men are seen as weak by the alien trees, weak in the sense that they are not female and can procreate. Literally nature at its core. Nature over nurture, and there's a whole extra can of worms we can throw at the feminists on that one. But here, that's what this narrative is about. So it doesn't redress the balance, but it's a beginning of a very long road back. It doesn't really balance anything if you think about it. The woman's still a terrible driver. And what exactly does that say? Is it a character flaw? I don't know. She can, after all, pilot a spaceship. And she uses her emotions and pain to help guide her and her husband home. So perhaps that's more to do with it. I'm sure I could at great length write some well-thought-out, meaningful essay on this, but not tonight. Tonight I just have to mention it in passing. I'm sure you can come up with your own theories and conclusions. Again, it's not perfect. The biggest part of this, the biggest excitement for me, was that Bill Bailey was in it. I love Bill Bailey. I saw him when he was Donna McPhail's support act. I met him backstage waiting to meet Emo Phillips. This guy I have followed since he was on Pebble Millet 1. That's how long I've liked Bill Bailey. Arabella, we're the only female Doctor. Well, Do you want to be counting Joanna Lumley in this? Yeah, you can. That's not a crime. They're about as canon as each other, I suppose. But for here, Arabella is playing the first weak female character she's ever played in her career, to my opinion. This is the woman who is the duck at the end of Hannah's Helpline. This is the woman who did the whole Is My Bum Big in this for the first show. Talented writer, yes. Chatter, yes. Performer, indeed. But this is the first perceivably weak or indecisive female character I've ever seen her play. Odd. They were more council workmen than alien invaders. Again, there is no actual true threat. The trees just wanted someone to chat with. The baubles needed some sort of form. All of this is acceptable. But there was no real overriding threat. But it was moving so fast that you didn't really notice it. All we did was see how lovely it looked, and I can live with that. Try not to do it again. My wife was very pleased it was pond-free until the end, which brings us, of course, to the very end. The doctor crying, my wife turned to me and said, "Oh God, is Moffat going to do the whole half-human thing?" And you know, I didn't actually see that at the time. I just saw a little character tweak, so much better than marrying River Song or anything like that. Perhaps the ponds have developed in the 2 years in between then and now. We'll have to see what the next series brings, if the Doctor hangs around with them, or at least chooses to. So yes, pond-free, like last year, always making it an improvement. And I know they're off at some point, but that's for another podcast, for another time. I'll fade away now because I've talked about this for far, far too long. So until next time when I'm talking about the unit boxed set, which is due out very early January, be seeing you.
You have been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. Contact us at tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk.